take a moment and remember him, and we are going to carry on in this work um, in his for his legacy, and continue it on for that, because that is what after working with him I feel he would have wanted us to do. So
Yeah.
Danny and I had a good cry earlier. As soon as we found out, we ran into a conference room and just had a really good cry. Kristen and Theo, we would we'll talk about more about it later, but maybe plan some type of community meal or something that would benefit those in need. Um, uh, After the dust settles and everything, and do something in his honor. Mary, I signed up without a camera and mic permission. Can usually turn mic on in Zoom, but will do. Can you help? Let me see what I can do. Mary, let's see. Can I unmute you? Oh, you moved. I hate when as people log on, everybody moves. Um, yeah, I can ask you to unmute, but I can't unmute you personally. Let me see if I can do it over here. Sometimes. Oh, now you're unmuted, Mary. I think you're good. I think you can talk. Do you want me to turn on your camera as well, or no? You just let me know, and I will do that. Okay.
While we're waiting, it's Carol in Charleston, and I was at a meeting yesterday at St. John's Episcopal Church, and one of the staff from Charleston uh, um, Citizens Action Group was giving us, just discussing with us the Social Justice Committee about what they were working on.
I think that's Julie.
Yes, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry because I couldn't think of the name right then.
that's quite all right. Yeah, that's Julie. She's part of our organizing group as well. Yeah, I work with Julie all the time. She's fantastic. So I'm glad you were able to hear her talk. We're trying to we're trying to make some waves here and make some change. Um, but we'll go ahead and get started. I think we are recording, so we're good. So we'll have this for the folks that weren't able to be here. It looks like we're going to have a smaller group this week, and that is okay. All right. So, how did everybody feel about last week? If you were able to be here, everybody feel good? Feel like ready to move forward into issue cutting and learning what and how to build a campaign. All right, Kristen's ready. Love it. Love to hear it. How about you, Theo? Don't be quiet on me. You feeling good, Theo? All right, good, good. Did you have something you needed to say, Theo? You have your hand up. I don't know if you were just responding to me being silly or okay. All right. Well, let me share our screen. We've got, I think, a pretty good um, program for tonight. We probably won't be the whole 90 minutes, so you all can thank me later for that. um, and Danny may join us. Like I was telling Carol, I'm at a conference in St. Louis, and we're an hour behind, and I had to keep checking the time today because I was paranoid I was going to forget that I was behind time and miss this or something. So today is session two. We're going to talk about cutting the issue. So as you're organizing, you have to have something you're organizing around. What are you building people? up to do. So this is going to show us and give us some guidance on how to figure out what issues work with what affects your community. We're going to talk about working up a power analysis, and that's the power you have and the power you don't have, and develop your pillars of support. And then after you've done that, we'll give you some tips on developing and designing a campaign. So again, why are we here? We are here to build a multiracial working class political structure that works for all of us. And I think the more that we remind ourselves and ground ourselves in that, that's going to help us keep moving forward. Um, Today, we're working around, I've talked about, how we're building towards a general strike, and I'm working with people who are with the Free DC movement. There's a lot of labor organizations here in St. Louis, and it's something that just really, I've always known this, but it just really hit today in this session I was in earlier, that our entire like political structure, and especially right now, it is built on racism. And we really just have to name that and identify that, and really try to break down those structures that hold that up. And so we really have to just keep in mind that it's built on racism, it's built on misogyny, it's built on uh, you know, against women, against the LGBTQ community. It's the system we have right now only works for a very specific group of people, and it's not the majority of us. Um, so, what is a problem versus an issue? Well, a problem, it's a broad area of concern. And while an issue incorporates a partial solution, at least a partial solution to a particular problem. So let's look a little bit deeper into that. So if you're looking at an issue, what components should a good issue have? And one way to look at it is it's got to have your head, your gut, and your muscles. So it's got to have all of those components in order to um, work in a really meaningful way. So, in terms of the head, it has to be concrete, it has to be specific, and it has to be measurable. And we've all heard that in school. When we were working in science class, or anything else, you had to be able to measure it. It had to be specific, and it had to be something concrete. And so the issue has to be specific and have a solution that can be measured with a clear target. And preferably that in terms of social justice, that target is going to be someone in a position that can be held accountable and can make change. And so they would be a decision maker. They would be like a CEO of a corporation if a corporation was our target. And I'm really apologize for the bad lighting. Hotel lighting is terrible. So apologies there. But so and it and in our power analysis, it must be winnable. Now, does that mean right now? No. And I'm going to show you an example of a power analysis um, that does show, like, even within a 10-year spread, they're not going to see a the win, but they're going to see some um, incremental moves towards the main goal. And it's got to be it's got to work in your gut. It's got to be something that people feel and they feel strongly about, and it's got to be something that affects a lot of people. And I think here we also have to, we can't decide that something is an issue for a group of people that we aren't a part of. um, we can't decide that the people closest to the problem have the solution. Generally speaking, that is, if you're working on an issue with poverty, you've got to be working with the people who are in poverty. Because if you aren't in poverty yourself, you don't know. You don't have that lived experience. And a lot of times, well, in fact, 100% of the time, you need people to who are speak to power that need to be close to power, and that's the people you're trying to reach. And so winning should deliver on self-interest and making lives better, and it pushes against the status quo. It pushes against what we are living in and in what we're living in now, and in what we're pushing against now. I really want to, does anybody feel like, well, going back to the way it was before Trump, the solution? I don't think so. There, we were still missing a lot of pieces. We're still missing equity and equality. We're still a lot of people were still struggling. It just things just were different. But so going back isn't the solution. We've got to move forward to something better. And then you got to have muscles. It's got to build the organization that you're working from, to bring in more people and have those people develop leadership skills and help you build visibility, credibility, and it also helps you increase your resources. Kristen has, knows people and has contacts that I know nothing about, but because of our collective, collection and working together, we're able to expand on the resources that we both have, and can really bring visibility and more into our campaigns than what we could by ourselves. And it should also build unity among your members. It should build a sense of community. It should build a sense of belonging, and working towards a common goal. So when you are stating your issue, um, and once you have decided on an issue, you should be able to complete the following sentence. And it's, because of whatever the problem is, we want, you know, who is your target, and what do you want that target to do, and what's your deadline? So let me see if now is a good point to, yeah. So what I'm going to do to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about here. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and move to another one, so bear with me. My tabs are a hot mess, so please don't hate me. Where'd it go? Ah, here it is. Okay, so I'll share here. This is a when we were working towards what our healthcare program with People's Action would be. We went through a lot of these questions. What is our power pathway? Where do we focus? And these are the things we talked about. And it's now called our Care Over Cost campaign, but it's a Medicare for all strategy. Where do we focus? Because there is a lot in the healthcare industry. There are a lot of tentacles swarming, for the greed in healthcare. And what milestones can we reach in 10 years? And what are the stepping stones to getting there? We call Medicare for all, or healthcare for all, our North Star. That's what we are. That's our main goal. That's where we want to get. And so, what do we have to do to step towards that to get there? Didn't want to do that. Okay. And so we had to look at our power pathways. And one way to do that is to divide, diminish, and isolate corporate insurers, because we decided that corporate insurance was probably the biggest beast we could take on. and that there were a lot of other organizations that were already tackling, um, you know, prescription drug pricing and pharmacy benefit managers. And so we said, what piece of this pie is something that People's Action um, could take on that really isn't being tackled right now that we can take on that's different, so that we're not all focusing on one thing when there's so much that is the problem. And so we wanted to build a base at a massive scale. And that meant bringing on, in terms of People's Action, that meant bringing on state-based and community-based organizations into this program. And and so part of this was going to be electing majorities at state and federal levels, making new and unusual alliances, and sometimes that means um, you know people within the industry even can be um, new and unusual alliances. And what we wanted to do was change the worldview of how privatized healthcare operates in the United States and expose the greed, the backdoor practices, and um, and how they operate for profit and not for patients, and and win policy so that we can get to the structural transformation of Medicare for all. So that's, and then we had to look at what is our power pathway, and again that was dividing and isolating out of the whole big healthcare structure, um, dividing them out so that we could focus on them and make them the focus of and diminish their power as corporate insurers. So what was our 10-year milestone? We knew this, we were not going to get, Medicare for all or healthcare for all, however you want to phrase it. There's some, trust me, I get it. There's, issues with the phrasing. Um, we knew we weren't going to get there, in 10 years. But we wanted candidates that will run on a Medicare for all platform and win those Democratic primaries, and that those people are aggressive about limiting the profits of corporate insurers and using those funds and reinvesting them into public programs such as Medicaid, and also getting the corporate insurers out of Medicaid and Medicare Advantage and other programs that harm our most vulnerable. And we wanted to ask Democrats not to take insurance money, private insurance money, for their campaigns. And that we wanted to see if we could get most Democrats to name corporate insurers as the villain and run, like again, as part of their platform against them by not taking money and helping us villainize them. And so yeah, that was our next milestone, was to make Medicare for all a dominant position and breaking its relationship with corporate insurance. Not an easy task. We're still fighting it. They got lots of money in their pockets. So, how we were going to do this is by state level campaigns through the state affiliates, such as West Virginia Citizen Action. And that exposes corporate insurers' poor care and waste through pre authorizations, through delays and denials of care, um, and then to claw back and reinvest those public dollars into public run healthcare programs. And then help us build and retain a bigger base, including with those unusual allies. So that was part of our strategy. And then the stepping stone two was to create a shift nationally. And this is where I think we really did work. I was part of the United um, folks. I was at the United Insurance. Uh, I can't talk today. Um, their headquarters, and was arrested for blocking the road into their It was a planned arrest, but we um, we we protested outside of their office with several hundred people, and then eight of us lined up and blocked the road into their headquarters in order to get attention and get press so that we could expose that they had made over $1 billion in 1 quarter in quarterly profits, and we're going to announce that that day. So it was very timed. It was very strategic. But so and I mean it was, trust me, this was completely, it was not planned. But then that's when the whole Luigi thing with the United CEO happened about a month later. And then it really got people talking because we had gotten lots of national media because of our protest. And then that, unfortunately, we don't condone violence of any kind. Um, but it did raise awareness about an issue that is very prominent with people right now. So we were able to, kind of strategize on that movement. Um, and so then this just kind of talks about, what it is, what it isn't. But so you can see how we kind of put those pieces together to come up with our strategy. Does anybody have any questions right now before I move into campaign planning? Because that seemed to go kind of quickly, and I apologize if I raced through it. Okay, no questions, comments, cries of outrage? Okay, we will keep moving. Let's see. I think I think I can go back to, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we've identified a problem and we've identified our target and what they want to do and when we want to see it done. So, building a campaign plan. So, you obviously want change. You want something to change. And so you've defined your primary target, and so you need to look at, is it a specific corporation? Is it a lawmaker? Is it a policy that you want to change? And who is the person that can give you what you want? And then there's always sometimes there's a secondary target, which is another person that can maybe apply pressure to the primary target. So, let's say that I want, I'm just using names. I'm not promoting anyone or anything else. So let's say I want Mike Oliverio in the state Senate to, I have targeted him. I want him to change his vote or his mind on voting a particular way on a healthcare issue. And I see John Williams, and I'm like, hey, John, is there a way that you can apply some pressure to Mike? And, by some, whatever you're wheeling and dealing in there. Can you apply some pressure to Mike? Let him know that this is really important to the community. Here's our letters. Here's what we've sent him. Here's all the information. Can you take a look at it and, say, hey, Mike, we really need to do this for, Monongalia County. So, that's the kind of thing you want to look at. And then strategies in ways to use your power to win your demands. And so, and that's a variety of things. Um, and talking to another politician about, hey, can you get on board with me here and help me work on, this particular politician who's, not really on board with us? Or, sending a bunch of people to go speak at the legislature, to go have meetings with these politicians, that we think can be moved, and using that power of story. I've talked a lot about how your stories really make a difference, and especially when you tell them in person, because they can't look away from the issue. when you're staring it in their face. Um, and how you're going to use those stories, either through again, talking to them directly, using them through a social media campaign, having people write letters to the editor. Those are pretty powerful, believe it or not. Or if you're going to have, a signature campaign, any of these, tactics and strategies. Um, it's just going to depend on what your issue is and how you want your campaign to build. Direct actions are great. You can, if you've started, if you've called Shelley Moore Capito's office until you're blue in the face. All right, let's go sit in front of her office until somebody agrees to talk to us. So if you want to escalate a
Doesn't
campaign,
work either.
I know it doesn't work either. I don't think anybody's in the Morgantown office ever that you can't see in or anything. It's very strange how they have that set up over there. And then your objectives. What are the steps that you need to take um, to get what your demand? Oh, sorry, to get what you demand, and how you're going to measure your progress. And that is important. That can be in how many people you have that have joined on to help you and have joined on to go sit in front of the office, or who have joined in to go speak at the legislature. How many people gained, you've gotten momentum with more people gotten to join you, or okay, they're agreeing to um, sort of help, sort of work on your demands, but that you're going to have more meetings, in order to make those negotiations happen. So you can really measure those steps and your progress in a lot of different ways. Um, and you need to have kind of a cohesive message, and it needs to be brief, about 3 to 5 sentences, addressing the problem and the solution that you and your team or your members have arrived at. Um, so for us, it just the health, denials and delays of care through the healthcare industry, and the massive amount of profits that they're making versus the care that people are actually getting. And so that was, very incoherently put by me, the main message. Our solution is that what we went in with for United Healthcare was they needed to end prior authorizations, that uh, all that there be no denials or delays of care utilizing AI, and that the any denials needed to be done by a medical professional in that field. So a neurologist cannot deny my insulin as a diabetic. Somebody from endocrinology would have to deny, a medication. Um, so those were the top three. We had more, but those were the top three that we had. Um, And so what those tactics, your tactics are, a collective show of power to move the target, and what you do to challenge or engage those power holders. And I mean, in a lot of cases, showing up where these people of power are going to be, when they're attending fancy dinners, or, or things like that, and do what we call bird dogging. Just start yelling, hey, what about, do you know people are dying in your community? Do you know because of your business practices, so many, 1 in 4 diabetics is rationally, I keep using diabetes, so I apologize, but rationing insulin in the United States because of your business practices. And what that does is, because there's usually press there, and it gives press attention to the issue and helps you gain more momentum behind your campaign. And so again, there's a lot of other things you could do as well, but just kind of naming a couple that are kind of fun. But yeah, direct actions, even boycotts if that's possible. Lots of different things that we can look at to build a campaign plan. And you can have several different ones where you are, here's where we're going to start, and here's where we're prepared to escalate to in order to move the needle on this issue. And so, what are the stakes? And that means the stakes for them as well as the stakes for you, your organization, your group. What is the cost of inaction? So, what would be, I'm going to stop sharing so we can interact a little bit. What are some of the costs? Oh, it's Danny. Hi. Tuning in from St. Louis as well. Thank you for joining us. If you don't know, Danny is West Virginia Citizen Action's executive director. Danny, do you want to say hi to the folks or anything? Or...
Hi, folks. Yeah, I didn't mean to distract. I ran here as fast as I could after our debrief. If Mindy didn't tell you, we are part of a national network of organizations responding to Sean Fain's, who is the UAW president, call for a 2028 general strike, and figuring out how we actually get to that point. And it's a constellation of both networks and organizations, local unions, faith groups, the whole nine, all sort of getting together, one to plan for 2028, but also to plan for what we all believe based on our best analysis is an inevitable election steal in 2026 and how we can structure test mobilizing for that. So Mindy and I are a little empty behind the eyes. We've been thinking about very, very casual, normal things all day.
Very existential crisis things all day. It's been a day. So uh, let's think about what are the stakes of inaction, and let's talk about what the stakes are to our targets, the people that are have the power, are making the policy, are making the rules, are are greedy and taking our money. What are the stakes to them if we don't act? Anyone? Well, they really don't. There really isn't. They just feel empowered to keep doing what they're doing and being worse, right? But what are the stakes to us if we don't act, and to our community and to the organization?
Well, like with healthcare, people keep dying, so it's pretty high stakes, really.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. People keep dying. Nobody's standing up. Nobody's fighting the system that just keeps, rolling right over them. Anything else? Danny?
Oh, I didn't realize I've just been over here sniffing and coughing. I've been off mute
You're
the
fine.
whole time. Apologies. Um, I wanted to ask if this group has talked about self-interest yet and identified like one, like your self-interest, what you have to lose if you don't participate in the movement and start organizing and start moving campaigns forward, protecting the vote, winning healthcare, et cetera, and like the local ways that we chip out at that, but also like collective self-interest where we talk about the spectrum of support, right? Like, got to bend all the way backwards. We don't need to organize the people on the left right here because that's us. We've already been activated, and we don't need to organize the people over here on the far right because they're never going to ideologically agree with us. But then that leaves this whole spectrum in the center, the persuadable middle, where we will have some collective self-interest, but not an entire overlap. And like we have to organize with those folks because, our liberation is permanently intertwined, regardless of whether or not we agree on everything.
Exactly. Exactly. And we're seeing that, I think, as an example a lot in our data center work. We're seeing communities come together that don't ideologically agree on everything, but they're agreeing they don't want this data center in their backyard. And they don't want these health implications, and they don't want these environmental implications. And so, yeah, they're coming together as communities and standing up and standing firm and saying no together. And that is I think, a great example of that. Um, Sorry, my external pancreas is losing its mind. Um, I'm fine.
I can jump in anytime. Go
I'm
on. Go get
good.
your food. I'll tell on you.
All right, I'm gonna hop out just for a few minutes. I'll be right back.
Wait, hold on. Share the slides with me first. Don't go. I mean, do go, but not yet. Shit. Oh no. Okay, maybe I'll find the slides, maybe I won't. Ah,
No,
cool. I don't
we're
know what's
fine. We're
next.
fine. I'm good. I just need
No,
to.
hold on.
I'm good because it's
Yeah,
in my
you
folder because I had to make them just like now.
there. Okay.
Okay, so I'll share the screen again. And da, da, da. Can tell we are just a well-oiled machine today.
Anytime you tune in from a conference, you're not at your best. That's
But
rare.
anyway, the stakes to yourself, I think, are nothing changes. And that's also for your community. Your organization doesn't grow. You don't build any power. And because why do we need to build power? We need to build power to stand up to these organizations and these policies and these politicians who think they have all the power. And like we talked about last week, there's more of us than there are of them. And if we can just come together, we can put us all together and really make a difference in how they operate and how our political system operates. And so, if I hadn't, I mean, I'm just one person, but if I hadn't stood up with um, other folks who had been affected by um, prescription drug prices, there wouldn't have been this pressure on the pharmaceutical companies to negotiate, even to a degree that they did through, and they only did through Medicare, but it was a step forward. I considered that a win. And because it may not have affected me right in that moment, but it affected people who were vulnerable, who were living on a limited income, and it showed that it could be done at a level. This can be done, so why not move it forward? So it's those, like we talked about, those stepping stones, those incremental stepping stones that are very frustrating sometimes because you want the big thing, you want the North Star, but at times we do have to take the the stepping stones to get there, particularly when you're talking huge, big structural change. And so let me go back here. Okay, so we talked about what happened. And so we're going to talk now about developing a strategy, your strategic overview. And that is basically crafting a roadmap for impact towards the structural change. So it's going to include, and I know this looks like, oh, you've got to do all this analysis and everything, but if you really want this to work, you really kind of do have to go through all of these steps. And, you do have to be able to identify your problem, what your roadblocks are to getting there, who you need to talk to. And that's doing a political analysis and a power analysis. And building power with the communities you need to reach in order to make these changes. Um, what are your short term goals? What are those stepping stones and the tactics that you can use to get there? And, and again, your North Star, what's your North Star? Um, Again, healthcare for all. I just want everyone to be able to go to the doctor, get the medicine they need, or get the care that they need, and be able to live happy lives. That's all I want. And then build your universe, and that is basically talking to your people, talking to people. It comes down to conversation. Yes, Danny.
And that is the organizer term universe, where it's actually a very defined set of folks. Because in theory, at the point where you're cutting an issue, or as part of your cutting an issue, you've done a power analysis and you determined who controls the levers of power that will allow you to win this change. And then you've also done some research on the back end to see who controls that individual's levers of power. Follow the money is a big piece of that. Sometimes it's elected officials. Sometimes in local campaigns, it's one person on a county commission that we all hate. Even folks in the other part of the state hate him for you. Um, but you have determined who is the universe that you need to mobilize in order to persuade. So it's not just who is impacted by this issue, but that's like a pipe dream of you contact everybody and you just mobilize everybody. But in order to be really strategic and tactical, you want to be thinking about who are the communities whose stories will matter, but also who are the communities who already hold a level of power in order to make this happen. Sometimes that just means one particular legislative district, for example, or one magisterial district, which is how Board of Education and County Commission seats are divided. Um, Sometimes in statewide campaigns or national campaigns, it's demographics, and we cut those universes through VAN. If you guys are not familiar, if you've worked with the Democratic Party, they call it Vote Builder, but it's the exact same tool. And it's what we use as well. And it's based on voter data and statistical overlays of like consumer habits, all that. So your universe can be very, very granular. It can be a handful of people, or your universe can be tens of thousands of people, depending on who it is you need to move. Does that make sense?
Can you talk a little bit about Danny comes from an organizing background in labor, uh, teachers unions, to be specific. And she's wearing one of her shirts today. And she was one of the primary drivers behind Red for Ed when we had the teacher strike and 55. You were still in on 55 strong, right?
Yeah, 55 Strong was 2018. I was the vice president of my local, and I was one of the acting organizational development specialists. We didn't have an ODS, which is like our regional coordinator. Um, so yeah, I come at this both as part of the nonprofit industrial complex and as part of the labor industrial complex, and those different theories of organizing and how they intersect and diverge. But universe is one of those terms that carries across all of organizing. It is who you need to reach most urgently in order to win your issue.
So when you were striking, let's talk about, when you were
Sure.
organizing the strikes, um, who were your target? I'm assuming teachers and um, school workers were
Believe it or
your
not, no. No.
no.
Um,
Okay, talk to me.
so the way that that happened is a little different than a lot of folks realize, and it actually had way more to do with healthcare than a raise, and a monitoring app, some creepy iPhone shit. Forgive my language. There's a lot of cursing in the movement. I'm who I am, and I apologize. Um, some creepy iPhone shit where you had to like enter your number of steps every day or they were going to penalize you for your insurance, whatever. So like the teachers and the public employees, everybody who had PEIA was in already. But in order to build community support to go on a strike, to then win our issue. So like we're building the stepping stones of a campaign, right? You've got stepping stones, the first little pieces, and you've got milestones. Like this is a big win if we all vote to go on strike. And then you've got your big structural reform, your keystones. And our keystone was to totally reform PEIA. So our stepping stones and our universe wasn't actually the affected employees necessarily. Because in theory, the political education had been done that they were as in on the issue as they needed to be. But if you'll recall, we did almost a month's worth of walk-ins before we started doing walkouts. Who was in West Virginia during the teacher strikes? Anybody remember that? Did you see teachers on the side of the road at 6:30 in the fucking morning in February?
I was
Because we were
covering
there.
it as a journalist.
Yes, Leah, I see you. It was 6 in the morning, it was 12 degrees, and we were out there for 45 minutes before school, and then we alternated based on our duties, and we lined the hill to my school every single morning. There were 64 employees, and we had 45 people out there for every shift, regardless. So that there was enough staff in the building to keep it going. And we were stopping people as they, in my school, you had to go up a hill and then our parking situation for parent pickup was like a circle around the hill, and then you exited on the other side of the hill. So we lined both sides of the hill, and as people edged up, we were knocking on windows. Like, hey, we just wanted to let you know this is what's going on. This is how we would love to build community support. We think this is nonsense. We just want to be able to take care of your kids. So our universe was the people who would be next most affected to us, parents. We wanted their support for the strike because it was illegal for public employees to go on strike at that point. So we knew we weren't protected by the NLRB. We had to get enough community support on our side to shut the schools down so that we wouldn't all get fired, essentially.
And that's another thing to when you're looking at your tactics and things that you definitely had to put into your thought process is because it's now illegal to strike in West Virginia. So
And it was illegal to strike when we did it in 2018, and it was extra illegal to strike when we did it again in 2019. There are ways around it, but you have that relationship with, the levers of power to understand what is feasible and what isn't feasible. And you've got to have already talked to your universe before you start pulling levers to know, do I have the community support to get this done? Do I already have the power to win my demands? And if not, what power do I need to build in order to do
right.
that? Which is the whole point of cutting an issue.
And so in terms of getting your strategy together, because I think part of it is also having to you've got your outreach, you've got your list, but so when you guys were ready to just pull the plug on it and say, okay, we're taking to the street, we're striking. What was your kind of like down communication strategy?
It's always one-to-ones. It's always relational organizing. It's always knowing who's got your back and who will link arms with you to block a bus garage at 4 in the morning. And in my case, it was the UMWA and a handful of other teachers. But yeah, we first did just a metric shitload of one-to-ones. I cannot stress this enough. I did a crash course and I taught all of the 40 something teachers in my building how to hold one-to-ones, and I sent them out to do one-to-ones with the rest of the county. And then got some of them training some of the other folks in our region where we didn't have a regional coordinator for our union. And at the time, there were still two teachers' unions, plus a service employees union that had split. So technically three that we had to get going. So we had to determine first what their needs would be and whether they were with us. So we had all those one-to-ones. And then in part of these one-to-ones, we also gathered information from people. Okay, but worst case scenario, I need your phone number, your first and last name, and your personal email address because we're not coordinating this on our work emails. Nobody's trying to get fired unless we're trying to get fired, and then we're doing it on purpose. And then also, we made a space that was leaderless and also leaderful. How many of you guys are familiar with the Public Employees United Facebook group? Is anybody in there? In there? I joined that group. I was number 36. I think if you go look now, there's still about 28,000 people in it. It's freaking wild. But we made sure that folks could communicate with each other without quote unquote leadership as well, so that we could mobilize locally and also at a state level. So again, universe organizing, cutting the issue, like internal delegation. And then once we pulled the lever on the strike, we actually pulled the lever early. I'm I'm from Cabell County. My shirt has Cabell on the back. You can't see it because I'm not standing up. I don't care that much. Um, but there it was Cabell, Mingo, and Logan. We actually walked out 2 days before the whole state went on strike, as part of a quote unquote warning shot. They called us Cabell County in 1991, and I took that personally. So not only did we authorize the strike this time, we went on strike early. Um, and we tested the waters. We went to see what the infrastructure would look like at the Capitol, how many people they would let in, where we needed to be standing to make the most noise. Oh, guys, don't bring metal signs. They'll arrest you. You can't have a sign on a stick. You'll go to jail. Like we had to, before we could mobilize the whole state and get 10,000 teachers in that building, we had to send 2,000 people to mess it up with slightly lower stakes first. So it was like a series of soft launches as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
lot of information. I did not plan to talk this much. I'm real sorry.
It's okay. I think it's good information to have because it talks about what the thought process needs to go into cutting an issue, what you're willing to do to get to your North Star.
And if we're using organizing language, I would call what we did a structure test. It was, do we have enough power now to do this without mobilizing 35,000 people on PEIA? Can we do it with just 2,000 teachers and families? So as a structure test, and also like determining levels of safety, essentially for a direct action.
Right. And that's kind of what we're doing as part of this May Day Strong convening we're at now, deciding, when and what type of structure tests to have in parts of the country. That can, what's going to mobilize people or what's going to bring out, how can we see how many people we're going to be able to bring out and or mobilize, and different parts of the country are going to, we were in a breakout room with DC. Well, their ability is a whole lot different than what we have in West Virginia, and their power is a lot different than ours. So, we're having to kind of really look at what we're able to accomplish and be really real with ourselves about what we're going to be able to do. And that's answering some hard questions. But so yeah, I just wanted Danny to talk about all that because these are all things that you have to put together no matter what type of action or type of strategic plan you're putting together. These are all still things that you have to kind of think about. What's your communication strategy within your group? What types of tools, what types of resources do you need? And do you know the people that you can get these from, or do you need to make those relationships? And one thing Danny talked about were one-on-ones, and I don't know if everybody is familiar with that term. We talked a little bit about them last week, but one-on-ones are basically conversations about self-interest, where you have a conversation where you are listening to someone about what their self-interest is. And for Danny, in her situation, she was talking to people who would be affected by the strike. Parents who would obviously be affected by the strike, but they wanted their support because all they wanted to do was teach the kids, and they were having all this other BS. So, but having those conversations, and that's basically what it is just having conversations with people and determining, hey, do we line up on this? Hey, let's fight together so we're not fighting, apart, and together we've got more power. So that's basically what a one-on-one is. I have lots of them, and if anyone wants training on one-on-one specifically, I'm happy to give it. Um, did you have
And that's
something else?
part of this arc of training at some point, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So there's
but
going to be an organizing night school one-to-one night.
yeah,
You're going to go into weird little breakout rooms.
and have one-on-ones together. It's going to be great. And so yeah, and then you need to identify also where your target constituency is located. Um, and go have one-on-ones with those people, and and develop that relational bond with them, and and create a sense of community around this issue. And I also want to point out that these strategies and these tactics and this plan, this all works both at a really big level, like healthcare, healthcare for all, and it works against a city council ordinance. I think Huntington is, can I say this? Are they trying to like recall their mayor?
Oh yeah, it's not a secret. It's not our mayor though. It's
Okay.
one of our city councilors who flipped on us. We helped him get elected. And the co-governance piece is not there. So now we only need I think it's 1,200 signatures to recall him. Um, we're coming for him.
And so Huntington is using this strategy and these tools to develop this campaign to recall this particular elected individual because they are not living up to the expectations and the promises that were made to get them elected. And so they're holding this person accountable and saying, you know what? We supported you, and now you're not living up to your promises, so you're gone. And I think that says a lot about a community. And so, and that shows the power that a community has. And the elected official doesn't have it, the community has it. And so, these go, these ideas, these plans, these tools work in whatever situation you're trying to work in. So don't think this is, oh, well, this is just all big, big level high talk. No, it is grassroots down in the dirt. Let's throw down and make some change. School board, this could work at a school board level. Well, and I'm throwing out Huntington again. They had a no parks, no libraries, no levy. Did I say it right? I always get it backwards. If
We
they
did
weren't going
not
to
have a
include,
good snappy slogan, and it
yeah,
accidentally also became our whole campaign name. And oops.
yeah, and Danny can talk more about that uh, program or that campaign. It was, if you're not going to include the parks and the libraries in this levy that you want to pass, then no, we don't support it. If you don't support the bare minimum of what the community needs and wants and utilizes, then no, we're not going to support the levy. So these are all ways that, yes, Danny,
I
please.
just want to say regarding that one, that is such a doable campaign because regardless of political affiliation, people are invested in the public goods and the public, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like um the pieces that belong to our whole community, right? And so for folks in Morgantown, that's going to look a little different than it looks for folks in Tucker County and folks, et cetera, et cetera. But there's some pieces of your community that are widely and broadly felt and also deeply felt. And we just happened to tap into one of those resources. But we didn't just win. We like extra super accidentally like crazy won. We defeated the first levy. We got the superintendent fired. Then we got the exact levy language that we wanted put back. And then we won that levy by like an 85% margin. When we had defeated it by a significant margin as well. There only a couple hundred people voted in favor of it in the first place. It was wild. Cabell County passes a levy, buddy. And that's something that's interesting about, for instance, Morgantown as an issue cut example. Morgantown passes a levy. There's not a history, an election in recent history where the quote unquote blue dots in our state have not passed levies. There are a couple of like medium examples here and there, but for the most part, our big population centers, like that's a lever of power that we're not seeing communities pull like they can everywhere. There are other levers of power to affect, for instance, superseding state level policy using what's called home rule that we just don't see people do enough. Because if you can get a city council to pass an ordinance for that city council, in many cases, the exception here is data centers, unfortunately, because they wrote it into HB 2014, but you can supersede state law at a local level. So when you're thinking about building your campaign, or building a campaign, or just like having conversations with folks in your community, like what's what do you think is wrong with our community? What issues do we need to address? Thinking about how to cut your issue should also include like um, what levers do we have that we're just not using that are available to us, I guess. Long story long.
Got it. And then we'll move on to, outreach. You've got your constituent where your constituency is located, and then you're going to have outreach, like all the lists you have, and strategize a plan, for who to reach out first and where your resources are, and pulling all of that together, and then how do you go beyond the people that you know? How do you reach out to these other people that, again, may not align with you on everything, but are more than likely to align with you on the issue that you're working towards? And, what are they willing to bring to the table to push this issue forward? Does all of that make sense? I know we've kind of gone over a lot there, so I just want to make sure everybody's okay and I haven't numbed everybody out with the dulcet tones of my lovely voice. Oh, is Mary still here? No. Okay. Oh, yes, I recorded it because a bunch of people couldn't be here tonight. Um, so yeah, that's okay. Questions, comments, as Danny says, cries of outrage. Speak now. Otherwise, silence is complicit. So I will move us forward. I don't think we have a whole lot more
That's
to
good.
cover, but let's take a look here at what other fun things I have going. Yes, this was a big message today that I heard. We were talking about at the very beginning how I said our system of capitalism and our system of politics right now is based almost entirely on racism, and that we need to identify that. And this gentleman was talking about the organizing he's been doing, and that the people closest to the pain must be closest to the power. It does no good for me to try to, as a white middle-aged woman, to go try to speak to the lived experience of a middle-aged black woman. It just, or a middle-aged black man, or anybody of color. It makes no sense. I need to work to try to empower people to move in their own self-interest and to help them in whatever way I can to build their community and build their base to move their issue. And give them the tools and this, teach them the skills that maybe I have in order to, um, so that they can better, the lives of themselves and their community. So we have to, as face our privilege and step away and clear the way so that the people closest to the pain can be the closest to the power and move in a way that gets them there.
And we talk about this a lot in climate organizing spaces. The phrase that we use a lot is nothing about us without us. Um, People in Charleston shouldn't be making decisions for folks in Mason County or Tucker County about their lived experiences, their working and living conditions, and what they can and should withstand with dignity in order to, line the pockets of somebody out of state or, in New Jersey, if you're Patrick Morrissey.
Yeah, I mean, I am not in a position where I am fortunate in where I live that I don't have muddy water. So, I need to empower the people who do have mud coming out of their faucets to bring their mason jars full of it and go speak to power.
Hey, we learned recently that gets you arrested at the West Virginia State Capitol, so maybe don't do that exact thing.
or it gets you accused of being at the Capitol when you
You got to bring it in plastic, right? No glass.
Not even
weren't.
that. You can't bring it because if it's an unknown substance, they consider it terroristic threatening, which is a federal offense.
Gosh.
Don't ask how we found this out.
Ask, but buy me beer first.
And somehow I was involved, but I wasn't. Wasn't even in the county. Anyway, oh yeah. So what are our takeaways here? Let's just talk about this, together. What are we taking away here? Anybody have any thoughts or yes, Kristen, you didn't because I took a couple days off and didn't realize that that I had the session right before I took days off. So I apologize and will be sending that in a mass email to you.
No worries.
I don't time things well, apparently. I'm really trying to get better. Did anything strike anyone in particular? Did something that was said or a tactic or anything resonate with someone? Y'all are very contemplative today. I get it. It's Thursday. We're tired. Yes, Danny.
Did you run them through the issue cutting worksheet? If we've got a couple minutes, it might be helpful for us to maybe pretend to fill that out for
Oh,
data centers or something else that is affecting a lot of folks in the state.
that is a good idea. Let me bring that up. Bear with me just a moment while I pull that up. But yes, we do have a worksheet that I was going to send to everybody. Um, and I will. And it helps you kind of talk through all of the things that we have discussed here and, work through how to cut that issue and how to, let's see. Yeah, here it is. It's just a black and white PDF version, but it'll be okay.
I would go so far as to say it is a hasty scan of a book that we would distribute to people if we were slightly more flush with cash. But instead, you get a scan of a book that I did in a hurry one day. I'm sorry. It's part of a training manual. We get trained as trainers through People's Action, our national. So there will be some references to what makes a People's Action issue in there. And I do think it's worth noting not all y'all are People's Action folks. For instance, Leah works with a coalition of us and like technically receives her paycheck from People's Action, but like doesn't work for us. You know what I'm saying? But when we talk about what makes a People's Action issue, I do want to share here in the chat our long-term agenda. We only pick up issues and campaigns that fit into this long-term agenda. Both fortunately and unfortunately, it's big enough that everything fits under there. You then have to start like prioritizing what is winnable, what do we have money for, what do we have power for, that sort of thing. But if you're ever curious about People's Action and West Virginia Citizen Action and our orientation, we run everything through this framework before we take it on as an issue. And we're lucky enough that they're not prescriptive about it. We got to be part of building this. They don't tell us what campaigns to take. They say, we're offering campaign support on these handful of issues. Opt in if you want. And so that is a big part of the reason why we work on data centers, for example. We got money to work on data centers before anybody else in the state of West Virginia because our national was able to read the tea leaves and say, hey, this is going to be a big issue. And we were like, yeah, I know. We've been intervening at the Public Service Commission since 1970. Like, this is going to be a big problem eventually. But we got a 2-year head start. So it is helpful sometimes. It is also a pain sometimes. Just worth noting.
And I want to point out, Leah put a great comment in the comment section. She said, if you want to make an impact, you have to leverage the people who are impacted. And if you got one thing today, that's number one. That is it. But let me share my screen again, and we'll go through the worksheet real fast. Okay. All right. So we talked about this, what makes a good, we went through the head, the gut, and the muscles. Um, Danny shared about, um, people's action. And I mean, it's basically the same things that we, like she said, we've kind of moved through these as well. It has to build a bigger we and challenge inequality, um, and build power. So here is the worksheet. I hope and like I said, I will send this out to everyone. And if you scan the QR codes on there when you get it, it'll take you to a clean worksheet. Does it still, or
It should, yeah.
it should?
And I do think there's an issue with the order of these because there's a blank worksheet first, and then there's a filled out worksheet like 2 pages down that might be helpful for folks to just look through to
Yeah,
see
let's look at that one
what it looks
first.
like.
Okay.
Now, of course, people's actions based in Chicago, so all of the examples are Chicago, and almost none of them translate to good old West Virginia. But happy to poke holes.
Yeah, so the big problem is homelessness in Chicago. Their statement is people are homeless due to lack of affordable housing and services for low income individuals. And then they go through and answer all of these questions. Homeless, what is the issue? Issue one, in the homelessness in the uptown community. Uh, Too many social services in uptown attracting homeless people, lack of funding, uh, pushing people into street homelessness, condo conversion leading to the loss of affordable housing in uptown. And I think this is probably something we can all see. I think every community, or at least larger metro area community like Morgantown, Charleston, we're all seeing things of this nature. And what demands come from the issue to end homelessness in uptown, close social services in uptown, increase the funding for shelters in uptown. Okay, here's what I don't know. I'm poking a hole here. Close social services and then increase funding for shelters. That doesn't quite make sense to me. But anyway, I guess it made sense to them. So we'll let it fly. So you can see how they have gone through and actually had to answer some hard questions. Um, there is there a target? They were not clear on this for that particular issue. There wasn't a target in Chicago, um, but in the other area, yes, in Alderson, uh, and listing them out, uh, or Alderperson, sorry, not I was thinking Alderson, but is it winnable? And they were very honest, no, in the first two, and only possibly on these two. And does the issue align with the mission and values and North Stars of your organization? And if the answer, I like this, if the answer is no, this isn't an issue for you. So I think what they were talking about maybe in issue three or issue two was maybe an argue. I think it's more of an argument that people were having that they needed to close social services so that people wouldn't come to that area. That's what I'm thinking, maybe. I don't know. And then yeah, I mean, it just continues with a lot of the questions that we talked about. Um, is the issue controversial? I actually add some things. Will it build the visibility and credibility of your organization? And so, answering all these questions is really going to help you really become clear about your campaign. But you have to be extremely honest with yourself about it, and your organization has to be very honest with itself about because issue one, where the demand was in the homelessness in uptown, no, they figured out no, that's not an issue that is winnable. That is not something that they can solve. But create a strong regulation to stop condo conversions is absolutely something that they could do. And so that's why on the second page you see, the first two columns aren't even being filled out because they've decided that's not a winnable issue for them, but they've gone on with issue 3 and issue 4. So they've been able to narrow down what what they're able to accomplish and what they're not in a very meaningful and honest way. And I think that's important. You have to be very honest about what your organization is able to do and what is truly winnable. They even put here, is this issue controversial? Yes, the real estate lobby is going to fight hard. And so they knew that going in, and they were able to prepare. And that's another thing. When you identify what your roadblocks are going to be, you're able to prepare for those roadblocks. Danny, in organizing for a strike, were there particular roadblocks that you had to prepare for? I mean, I'm sure PEIA was the first one, or was it the politicians?
Politicians are always your first and biggest roadblock. That's a broad statement, but it feels real true. Um, the fact that striking was illegal was probably our biggest roadblock, though, realistically. And so we had to go around that. And of course, we voted and authorized a strike, but we also had to then organize superintendents across the state so that schools were closed and therefore teachers wouldn't be reported, teachers, service workers, educators in general, folks who work in the school systems wouldn't then be reported as calling off of work
I
and
see.
therefore wouldn't lose their
Oh,
job.
okay. That's why okay, I get it now. That's why the superintendents had to
Yeah,
shut down.
superintendents were key, and we had to have them all choose to close their schools in order to move forward at all. That was a pretty big roadblock.
And I'm sure that was something that you had to do a lot of education, to the superintendents about perhaps, and your school personnel. To
Yeah.
know you're not going to get fired, you're not going to get in trouble if this happens.
And if there's enough of us, we have to work together.
Yeah.
If it's just me, y'all know me, I'm the crazy radical. If I'm the only one out there hollering, nothing's gonna get done.
And I think that's the big thing to learn here too is, I got into this work because I've got a big mouth, and I know how to use it. And I can be loud and obnoxious. But me being loud and obnoxious only got me so far. I had to align with other people and other groups that had the same self-interest I did. And again, like I said last week, my self-interest actually grew out of exposure to the issue at large, that it wasn't just pharmaceutical companies that were the villain. It's a whole greater combination of things and tentacles coming at people from so many different angles. And that allowed me to kind of open up my perspective and expand my focus. So it's being willing to learn, being willing to communicate, and being willing to educate other people. Because people, even when you have these one-on-ones, people are going to have questions. And it's okay. We don't know things until we know them. So being in a position of non-judgment and willing to educate folks when you're having these one-on-ones and when you're talking to people and trying to build your community and build your universe of people. It's important to have sometimes tough conversations, and we can talk more about that because we've got some programs and some training um, coming up about having those tough conversations. Okay, so let's see. Let's see. Could it be closed? Okay. Nate, do you want to talk more about your question? Are you okay? I'm just trying to understand it better. He put, could it be close as in supporting people closely, not close as in shutdown?
It was that Chicago the
Oh, I
yeah,
see.
like instead of closing social services, maybe like close work with social services or whatever, I
I
think is what
see.
he was meaning.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Nate. Thank you for clarifying that. I
Did
appreciate it.
It's a great example of assuming best intent with, in this case, the folks who built this worksheet. I don't know that they deserve it, but that was kind of you.
So does anybody have any questions regarding, you know, cutting an issue and thinking about building a campaign? And are you coming up with some ideas that you're thinking of that might be something that would work in your community? Kristen, I'm going to call you out here. I see you nodding your head. So what are you thinking
Yeah,
about?
because the data center issue. So I work with for the rest of you who don't know me, I work with Micah in Morgantown, a chapter of CAG, but I live in Fairmont, and they're trying to put a couple of data centers into Fairmont. It's just starting in the works, and there's a lot of people really worked up about it. So we're trying to form a working group. I've reached out to the CAG folks who are doing data centers. I haven't heard back yet. But between us and Fairmont's Indivisible group, we're trying to put together a working group for that. And in fact, one of our local politicians here in Fairmont, our local legislators, has a luncheon every week at this little tiny restaurant in Fairmont. And we found out that he was bringing a couple of other legislators yesterday with him to talk about data centers, and that group was able to rapidly form a group to go, and it was standing room only there in the restaurant, and we're able to kind of push back on some of the things that they were saying. So this kind of stuff, and this is why I wanted to take this training again, because I think for things like that, this is going to be really really good. And I know Warren was here last week, so if he gets the recording, I'm sure that'll be helpful for him too. Um, Yeah, and then I know Barbara wants to start this What's at Risk campaign to help get out the vote. And I think that going through an exercise like this could be really helpful to nail down some of the aspects of that that's are a little more conceptual right now rather than like concrete. So
Good, good, great. Danny.
I just want to name that voter registration, education, and turnout are like lighter lift campaigns that get you flexing this muscle and thinking about how to build a campaign and starting with some of the tactics without having like a target or a billionaire you have to take down or something crazy. You know what I mean? Because
right,
if you scratch at the surface of a data center, 100% of the time there's a tech bro, technocrat, oligarch, likely, from out of the country, let alone out of the state. And so, like, being able to combine the issues is really helpful too. So, you don't always have to think about those as two separate issues, but like voter registration and education and lack of turnout is what got us HB 2014, which has now circumvented all of the levers of power for our democracy at the local level. So now the fools in Charleston get to tell people in Fairmont what they get and how much tax money they get and how polluted their water has to be. And so, like, everything is democracy and democracy is everything, kind
yeah,
of. So,
yep,
like, I would encourage every campaign you build to also include voter registration, education, and where possible, turnout. Um, Plus, we have some real serious expert analysis that we are 10 months into what is typically an 18-month authoritarian consolidation. There's a playbook, and we know the timelines, and we know that this election will be stolen in some way. Maybe that'll be ice at the polls. Maybe it'll be what I think it'll look like in West Virginia, where they've got enough narrative reach to then convince people that voting is pointless anyway. And so like lack of faith in democracy is actually how they stole the election here. But in DC, they're gonna steal it very differently. It's gonna look a lot different. And like prepping folks to mobilize to things like that. I think Micah is really strong in those areas. And so like connecting it to what you're already doing too, I guess
yeah,
if that makes sense. There's a long way around it, but like you're not without already flexing these muscles. Like you've got a lot of it already.
Yeah, and one part of that we can even talk about is something that was talked about this morning. It's called it was like called hashtag day one, and it really encouraged people to early vote, like go out en masse on day one of early voting because it's less likely to be interfered and manipulated, and the more people you can get out early, the better. And so I would like to see us push, a version of hashtag day one, during the general.
And our early vote adoption in 2020 was insane. And CAG was the centerpiece of that work. CAG and the West Virginia Civic Engagement Table were the two pieces that really moved that. We worked with the state. We worked with the Secretary of State's office. We worked with Natalie Tennant. We worked with everybody to get that saturation, so that folks understood why it was important to vote early, not just on election day. So it's doable, it's winnable. We've already won it before.
Yeah. Okay. How's everybody feeling? Are you feeling educated? Are you feeling excited to go start looking at, different campaign ideas and strategies and tactics? Come on, Theo, what do you got? Picking on Theo
Yeah,
today.
feeling more educated. And thank
Good.
you, Danny, and thank you, Mindy. But Danny, it was great hearing about your union work, and I really appreciate those examples. That was very helpful. And thanks, Mindy, for going through that worksheet.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I'm so grateful for Danny being here because that type of organizing is something that I really don't have a lot of experience in. I've worked in, a direct actions, but I haven't been part of like a mobilized strike or, a huge mobilization effort like that. And so that type of experience, I think, is something that she really brings to the table here and was able to illuminate a lot of the ideas we were talking about, just different, it's a bigger piece and a bigger project, but it's something that we learn from and can take note of.
And none of the work works at the national level, which is where we see a lot of the news that is generated and a lot of the panic, and therefore a lot of the inciting incidents, to use an English major term, that get folks animated in the movement. And they're reading the news and they're outraged about what Donald Trump is doing. But individually, they don't have a lot of levers of power to pull to affect Donald Trump, and they don't have the political analysis that is necessary in order to take down someone like Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is a symptom, not a cause of a long-term authoritarian takeover that started in the 70s in West Virginia and across the country, beginning with packing the courts as an idea. So, like, political education is big, and we will never win nationally if we can't win at the state level. And we can never win at the state level unless we can win locally. You build your bench with local campaigns so that you can then have experienced folks who can run state campaigns. And when I say campaigns, I mean running issues, but I also concurrently mean our C4 work, which is getting folks elected and governing with them. And the idea is for CAG, because we're a C4 and our chapters are C4, not only do we have to run issues in order to get people into the movement, but concurrently, we have to be making local and eventually state level endorsements and co-governing with those folks so that we can then affect national change. So running it back to the hyper local, knowing your neighbors and having relationships with the people that you see every day and talking about hard things is like it all comes back to that. I know it sounds reductive, but the whole movement, we win on one-to-ones.
Yeah.
We win by having conversations with people who already agree with us, but who don't yet agree with us and have a lot of reasons that they could.
All right. It is 8:30. I am a stickler about sticking to time. So thank you all for being here. And I can't thank you enough for the energy that you bring. And I know we're all tired. I've got it too. But no, I can feel it. I feel the energy. So go out. We'll see you next week. We'll talk about more stuff. And I'll be in touch tomorrow with all the things. So, bye.
Go get some dinner. Take care of yourself, lady.
Oh,
Mindy, do you
yeah.
want to walk to the arch? It's like 12 minutes from here. Let's go eat.
Seriously?
Yeah, let's go. Meet
Okay.
you in the lobby. Bye,
Bye,
y'all.
guys. Have
All
fun.
for my health. I don't like this.